How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Shoot Happens, the place where I make photography make sense, one click at a time.
Let's do this!
Now, if you've ever taken a photo that was too dark or too bright or just didn't turn out the way that you imagined,
Been there, done that.
not to worry, you're not alone. And you're in the right place to learn how to correct those issues. Now, today we're going to be diving into one of the most important foundations of photography.
And what might that be?
The exposure triangle. But really quick, if you learned something new here, make sure you like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next video.
Consider it done.
So what about the exposure triangle? Well, it's simple. It's a way to understand how these three settings, aperture, shutter speed, ISO, work together to control how bright or how dark your image is. Think of this as a three-legged stool. If one leg changes, well, the other need to adjust to keep things balanced.
Sure, why not?
Let's actually start with aperture on this. Now, you've heard me recently talking about this. It's how wide the lens opens when you take a photo. A wide aperture like f1.8 lets in lots of light into the camera, and it gives you that dreamy, blurry background. But the wider it is, the more light you let in, which means the photo can get too bright unless you adjust something else inside of it. Next, let's shift lanes over to shutter speed. Now, this is how long your camera's shutter stays open. As we discussed in previous videos here, a slow shutter speed blurs motion, say a kid jumping mid-air. Now, a fast shutter speed like 1/1000th of a second is great for freezing that motion though. But a fast shutter speed lets in less light. So again, you might need to widen your aperture or raise your ISO to keep the exposure just right. And then there is ISO, which I think was last week's video. Now, this is going to control how sensitive your camera's sensor is to light itself. Now, a low ISO like 100 keeps your image clean and crisp. But in low light situations like shooting indoors or at a sunset, you might need to bump up that ISO to make your image brighter. As I've said before though, just know that a higher ISO can introduce grain or noise. Now here's where the triangle comes into play. Now imagine you're photographing your dog running through the yard on a cloudy day. You want a sharp image with no blur, so you choose a fast shutter speed. But it's cloudy, so not much light is coming in, and that fast shutter speed means your photo might be too dark. So the question is, what do you do? Well, you can open up your aperture wider, maybe to a f2.8 and raise your ISO to 400 or 800. And just like that, the triangle is balanced and you get a well-exposed image. It's all about, at the end of the day, trade-offs. You want a sharp image in low light? Well, you need to deal with some grain from a higher ISO. Want a beautiful background, blur, and bright sunlight? Well, you might need a faster shutter speed to keep the exposure in check. The exposure triangle helps you understand how to make those decisions. Now that you know how exposure triangle works, the best thing that you can do is get out there and practice. Try taking the same shot with different settings from within the camera. See how changing your shutter speed affects motion blur. Notice how adjusting the aperture changes the background. And watch what happens when you raise or lower the ISO. The more you experiment, the more intuitive all of this becomes, and it's not going to take you long either. So friends, there you go, the exposure triangle, a small bite-sized video here. Thanks for hanging out with me on Shoot Habits. Now, if you found this helpful, go ahead, hit the like button down below, subscribe, and drop a comment below telling me what you learned or what you want to learn next. And just remember, photography doesn't need to be complicated. With a little know-how and a lot of practice, you'll be shooting like a pro in no time. Well, friends, yeah, that's gonna be it for me. I'm gonna be shutting off the camera so you get out there and take your best shot.